Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to all our audience. I guess our participant list is still populating, so we'll give it a minute and then we will all get started here. Okay, so yeah, just being aware of the time, we've got quite a lot to cover today and a lot of wonderful panelists today, so I'll just get right on it. And I'd like to start by welcoming all of our audience today to the Inclusive Ways of Knowing, a focus on Islamic thought, science, and sustainability. This is part of our Diversity and Inclusion webinar series and in celebration of the Islamic Heritage Month, October. Okay, so starting off by land acknowledgement, we respectfully acknowledge Yorkville University campuses are situated in the traditional territories of diverse Indigenous nations. We reaffirm our responsibility to increase awareness and understanding of First Nations, Métis, Inuit peoples, and colonial legacy, and commit to strengthening our relationship with Indigenous peoples throughout Canada. So today's talk is about different ways in Islam of knowing in so many fields. So it goes far beyond what people may know about rituals or ways they're dressed, or outer things and routine actions that Islam may be calling for. It goes beyond this and speaks things about biology, health, sustainability, science, business, astronomy, among other fields. And our three very respected panelists for today are Dr. Jalaluddin, he's faculty of English at Yorkville University, who will talk to us about early Muslim contribution to various fields of arts and sciences. We also have Dr. Maha Salman. She's our Director of Bachelor of Interior Design at Yorkville University, and she will be talking to us about principles of sustainability and environment protection in Islamic perspective. And last but not least, Dr. Chadash Dijoglu, Faculty of Philosophy at Yorkville University, who will speak to us about modern and postmodern Islamic response to ecological issues. And of course, myself, I'm your moderator today, Dr. Iman Nasr. I am the Dean of Academics for British Columbia campus of Yorkville University. And I'll be giving you a very general introduction to today's talk. And I thought the best way to start with it is by speaking about Islamic ways of knowing in human rights. Speaking of inclusive ways of knowing and diversity and inclusion, what does Islam have to say about human rights? And here's a very interesting talk by Fadl Soliman. He's one of the Islamic intellects, and it's about an hour video, so it's quite long to mention, everything that was spoken about in that video. But I really encourage you to have a look at this. And actually, Fadl Soliman goes ahead to show evidence that 100% of the UN Declaration of Human Rights is actually included in the Quran, and he goes beyond that and says even more than that. So even more human rights are included in the Quran, which was quite interesting. And I just want to focus here on anti-racism specifically. And this is a verse in 49th chapter of the Quran saying that, humans were created in peoples and tribes that you make acquaintance with one another. So actually it is known or it's purposefully done that people are created from different, groups, tribes, backgrounds, and they should actually have the obligation of respecting one another, making acquaintances, and being kind to one another. So this is right there as a verse, very direct in the Quran, and it goes ahead and says that the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous. So actually the only judgment is done by God, and also it will be completely based or exclusively based on deed, as opposed to skin color or background or country of origin or any such thing. So anti-racism is very clear in the Quran. Many other ethics and manners are also there. And here, also speaking of sustainability, I'll focus on earth awareness. And it is also the philosophy of Islam that humans were created as successors on earth. So actually they have an obligation or a mission to take care of earth, to be aware about it, and to make sure that it's prospering, that it's in good shape. Although it was foreseen that some corruption will happen, some shedding of blood will happen, but we should all remain focused to our mission to be successors of earth and to be aware about what's good for it. Many other manners are also definitely all over the Quran, whether it's honesty, truthfulness, fairness, patience, amongst so many others. Okay, so what does Islam has to say about science? Well, quite a lot. Today, I'm going to just give a glimpse of that. As a matter of fact, God does say in the Quran that, those who truly fear Him are those who are scientists and the scholars. And it does, the Quran does assert or does drive people or urge people to go and look for signs in the universe, right? Go and question and query the world around us. As a matter of fact, the first word that descended in the Quran was read. So contrary to some understandings that, it is all routine or it's all just follow without thinking, it's all about driving people to think and question and query the world around them. A couple of examples about things in science that were mentioned in the Quran, and I know people would go like, why are you showing us a picture of a fly? Well, actually, believe it or not, the Quran mentions something about how the fly operates, and it challenges people that if a fly takes something from you, if it really obtains it, takes it from you, it'll be impossible to retrieve it back. That's verse 73 of chapter 22. And the reason why, and I'm going to play this video quickly here, is that the way that the digestive system of the fly operates is that it actually spits its enzymes, digests food before it intakes it. So since it's intaken, it means that actually it's impossible to retrieve it back because it had already been digested. That's quite fascinating. Something like this, as scientific as this, is actually mentioned in such a religious book. A very quick example is about pollinating winds, and this is a notion that was only discovered after the 1700s, pollinating insects, and after that, pollinating winds. However, in the Quran, it is mentioned that we have sent the pollinating winds, and 1400 years ago, remember that's when the Quran descended. More than 1400 years ago, with pollinating winds were mentioned. So quite interesting. Islam has something to say about Einstein's theory of relativity, believe it or not. So I know that this is likely beyond the scope of today's talk to delve into, deeply into, what Einstein had to say. But two main pillars here are time dilation for the relativity theory, time dilation and length contraction, both of which are actually in the Quran, believe it or not. So this is an example, two twins, one of them goes on and lives in another, so they're both the same age, but one of them lives in the, sorry, are you guys seeing my screen? Are you seeing my slides at all?
Just now we started seeing it. It was stuck in the first slide.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about this. So now you see it well?
Yes, now it's slide.
We are also seeing the notes.
The notes. So please click on.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I may have. Okay, so I'm gonna do something. Just give me a second here.
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Wow, so you did all this line, all that nice stuff? Okay. All right, anyway. So, here we go. So, the question of the people living in different time zones or different systems of motion and having different and time by losing some of them, how fast
You cannot see the video, Iman. Dr. Iman, we cannot hear you or see the video.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Technical problems.
Can you see me now?
Yes, we can see you.
Yes.
All right. Wow, very interesting. Okay. Okay, I guess I only have 2 minutes here, so I'm going to go very quickly just quickly mention that, Islamic ways of knowing in biology as well, and how the
specific development of fetus, embryology, what people think the miracle of nature, the miracle of creation of humans is actually all mentioned in the Quran as well. This is a small video, and I'm going to yeah, let me just make sure that sound is shared here, and I'll just quickly play that.
Out about the resurrection, then consider that indeed we, God, Allah, created you from dust, then from the watery bit of the semen, then from the creature that can attach, and then from a chewed matter, partially differentiated and partially undifferentiated, that we may show you. And we settle in the uteruses whom we will for a specified term, then we bring you out as a child.
Yeah, okay, so even more, so the entire process of embryology was actually mentioned in several verses of the Quran. So I mean, this is just one example of scientific thing that's mentioned in the Quran. Okay, what else? Astronomy and space, and the world's largest swimming pool was actually created for astronauts to train in. It's because they found that the experience of navigating space is exactly the same or very, very similar to swimming. And so this is relevant here because 3 places, at least in the Quran, it's mentioned that objects swimming in orbit objects moving in an orbit are exactly the same as if they're swimming. So that was quite also interesting. So I'm actually going to skip here as I lost a couple of minutes, and I am just very quickly going to mention health, fasting, and how it's used in healing in at least one clinic in Germany. And intermittent fasting is a big thing these days, whether it's used for diets, healing, or other reasons. Okay, now I'll just quickly now move on to our first panelist. And so we're going to start now a series of Islamic ways of knowing in art sciences, sustainability, and ecological issues by our panelists. So I'm going to introduce you now to my colleague, Dr. Jalaluddin. He's faculty of General Studies English at Yorkville University, and he has a master from the American University, Washington, D.C., and PhD from New York University. He taught in a number of countries, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Qatar, and Oman, before moving to Canada a few years ago. Published numerous books and articles in literary criticism and political analysis. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jalaluddin, who will speak to us about Islamic ways of knowing in art and sciences. Dr. Jalal.
Thank you, Dr. Iman Nasir. Thank you for moderating the session, and I also greet the members of the audience. Let me bring up my document on the screen. Let me. Share the screen. There you go. Sorry.
Dr. Jalal, would you like me to share my screen for you? I have your document if you want me to.
Yes, please.
Oh, sure. Do you see it now?
I can see my document, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry for the trouble that I was having sharing the screen. Again, yes, it's a very broad and vast topic. The early Muslim, Arab, Persian, Andalusian, Ottoman contribution to the various fields of knowledge and scholarship. The moment we talk about early Muslim contribution to different fields of knowledge and learning, yeah, we remember, Sindbad's stories, Sindbad's story adventures, and which has become a perennial source, universal source for many works of literature down the ages. And that Sindbad's adventures, the sailor, those stories became part of the Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights. And that also I think one of the first things that come to our mind when we talk about Arab and Muslim contribution to the heritage of world scholarship and knowledge, Arabian Nights. And these Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights, it flourished during the Islamic Golden Age. And that Islamic Golden Age was centered around the court of Caliph or Sultan Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad. And Arabian Nights also, like Sindbad's story, as I said, Sindbad's stories became part of the Arabian Nights, and altogether, proved to be an inexhaustible source, endless source of influence, interest, appeal for a lot of literary works to come. Those are of course anonymous works because those are full of folk tales and folk fables, fairy tales, and we do not know who really put them down. But so over the years, they kept being added to the collection. And then among the names, individual names, some of the names that instantly come to our mind is Al-Khwarizmi, of both Persian and Iraqi Arab origin, and he's the father of algebra, and he's also the father of algorithm. And his Latinized name, for that reason, his Latinized name is algorithmic. I have tried to arrange them pretty chronologically, so you can see the centuries mentioned. And then Abbas ibn Firnas, who was one of those who started thinking about hang gliding and flying. So, many airways of many countries like Qatar and other countries, they had the name of Firnas down there in their logo. Then we have the name of Ibn Haytham, and who contributed a lot to the world to the fields of mathematics, physics, and astronomy. And he was the forerunner to Galileo as a physicist almost 5 centuries earlier. And he's also the father of optics, you can say, a great innovator in the field of optics. And he's the one who said that, or who found that light emanates from objects and not the eye itself. Let's go on to what Ibn Sina, with the Latin name or Latinized name Avicenna, was famous for medicine, and Al-Ghazali, Islam's one of the most notable thinkers, philosophers, theologians, and Jewish from Persia, modern Iran. Al-Ghazali and Ibn Arabi, perhaps one of the, he's considered the greatest of all Muslim philosophers from Islamic Spain, Andalusia or Islamic Spain. Ibn Arabi. Ibn Tufail, 12th century, also an Arab Andalusian Muslim polymath, a writer, Islamic philosopher, Islamic theologian, and he wrote a book, the story of how a solitary individual on a deserted island lived. And that book called Alive, Son of Awake, was a forerunner by almost 600 years of Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, which is a classic. Everybody knows Robinson Crusoe living in an isolated island for many years. Abu Rushd, whose Latinized name is Averroes, was famous for his philosophy and medical scholarship. Ibn Khaldun, one of the greatest historians the Arab world has produced, from Tunisia. And he's the one who talked about the rise and fall of civilizations, tried to theorize history in terms of rise and fall of civilizations. Ibn Battuta, perhaps one of the greatest travelers and travel writers, and Ibn al-Shatir, who anticipated Copernicus's sun-centered theory of the solar system by more than a century. In this way, there are many, many writers, thinkers, scientists, historians who left their mark in the field of, in the world of letters. Here is a map which you can see. This is the map which showing the spread and expansion of Islam, the peak of it. So it's not, it does not show the entire Muslim world of today, but you see the main early Islamic world, which is like, here, you see this is Egypt and Arabian lands here, say Persia, and North Africa, and Andalusian, South Spain, Andalusian Spain, Islamic Spain. Later on, of course, Islamic world advanced or expanded into further east, further into Central Asia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, India, Malaysia, so on and so forth, and also towards Europe, which is like this Byzantine Empire, which came under the control of Muslim Ottoman Empire. And of course, it kept expanding into Africa too, the middle of Africa, East and West Africa. This is something very interesting to note. Medieval Arabs and Persians, they introduced ancient Greek scientific literature into medieval Western Europe. And together with Christian scholars, medieval Arab and Persian scholars, they introduced both sets of classical educational curriculum called trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and then quadrivium, geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and music. So,
Dr. Jalal?
Yes.
2 more minutes, please.
I'm sorry?
Can we try to wrap up? 2 more minutes is okay?
Okay, give me one.
I know. Lots to cover.
Okay, lots of things to cover. Yes, okay, so actually I divided my paper under different headings. This is literature, starting with Abdullah ibn Mukaffar, and then mostly this field has been contributed to by Persian Iranian writers, Ferdowsi, Omar Khayyam, Farid al-Din, Attar, Sheikh Sadi, Jalaluddin Rumi, Nizami, and people like that. And then the second heading should be history, geography, seafaring, navigation, and travel literature. They're actually intertwined, they're interconnected. The historians or geographers and people who went on seafaring and navigating, they also wrote travel and wrote travel literature. So here are many names, names of the books, the works, and also the authors. And I put another subheading here, travel and topographical literature, try to put something together which specifically belong to this field. If I may go on, seafaring, navigation, and this one, this medicine and health-related wellness, perhaps one of the most interesting topics or areas to modern generations that in this field, you see a remarkable contribution has been made by them, by early Arab Muslims and all that. And there are many names and their field of contribution. And hospitals, Bimaristan or hospitals were started by them. People of Persia and people of Andalusia and also Iraq, Baghdad-based people, doctors. Ibn Sina is one of the great medical scientists. And black seed, they talked about black seed, which most of us use these days. Black seed, for the Arabs, black seed is not only the food, but also the valued by traditional medicine. And Prophet Muhammad talked about it, and it is the cure for all disease except death. And great physician Ibn Sina also pointed out its importance. So this is, a great field of medicine and health-related issues. The names and the works and their contributions have been mentioned here. Hydrology and hydraulics and water technology that in Islamic Spain, that's Andalusia, and then especially in Egypt and in Iraq, the Muslim water engineers or the technology engineers have made a lot of contribution, and the water expertise in doing the Alhambra palaces and Al-Ghazali palaces there in Islamic Spain, and then how they built different mills and factories in different Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Iraq. That's a great thing for us to study and to see. Now, most of the things that we know today, most of the things that they did, the Islamic early Muslims did, today it seems to us to be very ordinary. But when they did it centuries ago, they were great discoveries. So yesterday's great discoveries may sound very ordinary today, but we have to give them the credit because they fathered, the engineer, they were the forerunners of many, many things in many different fields. And interestingly, there are many books that have been written by our generation, people of our generation, Ahmad Hassan and Donald Hill, Islamic Technology, 1986. And again, by them, by the same authors, 1001 Inventions, Muslim Heritage in Our World.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jalal. I think we will have to move to the next speaker, but I know there's a lot to cover and it's very short time. Actually, audience are asking if we can share the material after the session. So would you be okay sharing the document with our audience? So somehow we can make it available for at least the Yorkville.
No, not exactly now. I'll send you a slightly document.
Yes. And same for my own presentation. So I think the question was about all the material. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Jalal. And so sorry to cut you. I know there's a lot that we all want to speak about, but the time is really limited. And we got to move to our next speaker, Dr. Maha Salman. And welcome, Dr. Maha. Dr. Maha is our Director of Bachelor of Interior Design at Yorkville. She will be speaking to us about principles of sustainability and environment protection, Islamic perspective. A bit of background about Dr. Maha. She is the Director of Bachelor of Interior Design, like I said, at Yorkville. She is an LEED AP BD+3 who embraces numerous years of industry and academic experience, several publications and books, and a number of awards for her research work. Dr. Salman received her PhD in Sustainable Architecture from University of Huddersfield, UK, where she received the Vice Chancellor's Award for Outstanding Research. Wow. Her research focus is on pedagogy, sustainability, vernacular architecture, and human interaction with the built environment. Dr. Salman has been with Yorkville University for more than a decade, having developed and taught a broad range of on-campus and online courses in the program, and undertook the role of acting program coordinator and CIDA coordinator. Dr. Salman's student-centered approach leads her philosophy to create a positive, engaging, and inspiring learning environment. Welcome, Dr. Maha, and all looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Iman, and thank you for all the audience today. So our presentation will be about principles of sustainability and environment protection in Islamic perspective. Just to start that the word environment or bi'a in Arabic actually has not been used frequently like in Islamic say content, but actually it has been used as in the context of where a human being chooses to settle, such as homeland. In spite of environment importance in Islam, the word environment has not been stated literally in the Holy Quran or the Prophet Muhammad Sunnah. Actually, the understanding of environment, which is actually more important, which means earth with its living and non-living things and the atmosphere surrounding it. This means the big meaning of what environment is, and actually it has been mentioned 199 times in Quran. So environment philosophy in Islam urges people to preserve environment from harm, linking the protection of environment to the essence of the Islamic faith. Islam draws attention to the reality of the environmental balance and urges people to preserve this balance. And its main source of this direction is Quran and Sunnah. Just before I go on, Quran is the holy book of Muslims, where actually all the they follow their legislations, and most of the deeds are taken from, or the regulations taken from Quran. Sunnah is actually, or in Arabic means method, means actually these are the Prophet Muhammad deeds and sayings where Muslims, they learn more from what Prophet Muhammad told them. So most of the legislation, most of the deeds, and most of the principles we're going to notice today actually are built on Quran and Sunnah. And we have more time to we have a lot of verses or sayings of Prophet Muhammad can support some of the topics we will cover today. So Islam considers human being as Khalifa on earth. Khalifa in Arabic means inheritor or steward, as an honor for humankind by giving the mind, wisdom, and good judgment to deal with what we call amana. Amana means trusteeship. Means God give this earth to us as a trusteeship that we as a human being, we have to nourish and we have to take care of. So being a Khalifa obligates humankind to work to fulfill their needs and develop the environment, because humankind's or human capability to be a Khalifa is determined by the ability to build and develop the earth as commitment from God to people. So we have responsibility toward this gift that is given to us, and we are not the only players in this environment or this earth. The relation between human being and environment in Islam actually has been also based on two values: the utilization or subjection, or what in Arabic means taskhir, and middle way or moderation, or what we call wasatiyah. So utilization or subject refers to the responsibility given to humankind by Allah to use the components of environment and beings to help human being in discharging the task of settling the earth without abuse or misuse. These beings, all the human beings are, or all the creatures actually, living and non-living, these are partners to humankind in existence, and they deserve their own respect and have their own position. So we as a human being are one single part of the whole system, or the whole environment as created by God. The second value, which is the middle ways, moderation or wasatiyah, it refers to the quality that should mark a human being benefiting from environment. This moderation springs from the status itself that man holds within the universe, where the human being is a master in the universe, not the master of the universe. So being a master in the universe, as every creature in this earth is also a master, we are not the master of the universe. It's very important, let's say, principle or value that Islam calls for. This middle way or wasatiyah is the main aim of sustainability. But I want to relate it to sustainability, which represent a balance that accommodates the human needs without diminishing the health and productivity of natural system. And that's aligns with the sustainability definition we can find from different institutions saying, in the modern world, I mean, sustainability definition means the ability of society to continue functioning into the future without being forced into decline through exhausting or overloading of the key resources on which that system depends. If we go to some of principles and of sustainable environment preservation in the Islam perspective, we can find several principles, and they have built into, we have set it into certain points. So the first one talk about is resources conservations, where all humankind and all human being are positions from generation. They should have this, keep this prosperity from one generation to another, which that they inherit the plan. So each generation is only the trustee and should at the same time keep the trustee. And the concept of Khalifa, as we mentioned earlier, refers to the fact that waves of the humanity will continuously succeed each other and inherit planet Earth. So we should think of the coming generations, which is actually the core definition of sustainability. The second principle is environmental balance, because God has not created anything in this universe in vain, without wisdom, value, and purpose, and everything is created in a due proportion, measure, and balance. This balance is evident in each element and component in environment, qualitatively and quantitatively, to do its part in the ecological system. So we are all part of a system that we should care of, and any harm happen in one part of one system will affect the other. The other principle that Islam, cared for is the common right of resources. Islam has set rules for how human beings get use of the natural resources, yet it prohibited using these resources selfishly, ignoring others' right of that affecting the prosperity to fulfill their own needs. This is one of the main goals of sustainability. This right is to a certain degree considered by Islam as an obligation. The relation between the Muslim and the universe is one of the harmonious benefit and use. When Allah takes an oath by some creatures, he draws attention to the fact that the human being should recognize their value and take care of them. The other important principle is water conservation, because again, one of the main actually sustainability principles, water is a gift from God and actually the source of life. So even Islam calls for cleanness, and we do ablution before any prayer. Islam actually forbids the wastage of water and the usage therefore without benefit, because this will affect the resources. Even Prophet Muhammad, when you talk about the advisors saying, don't waste water even if you were on running river doing ablution. So even running rivers, we should care of them. And that's why we can see that it's noticeable that Islam cared about water. And if some of the image sitting here, that Islamic architecture has one of the most developed plumbing systems, whether on the in a city level when we have bath or public baths, or whether on houses when we have developed type of sewage and water system. Another important principle that in Islam is the greenery and plantation. Because Islam calls for greenery and plantation conservation and prohibits cutting down of trees without strong and legitimate reason, or putting garbage under them or their shadows. The Prophet Muhammad recognized the human being's responsibility towards natural environment and his role in its development. Thus he said, when doomsday comes, if someone has a palm skull in his hand, a palm shot in his hand, he should plant it. So greenery and plantation is evident in actually all the Islamic architectural houses and public spaces, and it is mimicking even the heaven. Air preservation also is an important thing that we have of the Islam, and it calls for keeping the air pure and unpolluted, and prohibited pollution air with smoke or offensive odor that might hurt others even with simple things. And I have a few slides to go. Thank you, Dr. Iman, for reminding me. The other principle is protecting human being against the noise pollution. Islam took care of the human being and made sure that the human being should not be subjected to loud and annoying noise to prevent harm to him both physically and psychologically. And even the hadith says that loud noise is foolish and harmful. And in Sharia, you shouldn't raise your voice, even if you are in the mosque or doing prayers, you should have calmness. And we can see that even in the urban level, I'm using my background, he's an architect. You see, even we looked at the city planning, we see the mosque, which it's the center of the city, and Then we have around it, usually we have the high level noise areas where we have the market, and then we have like more market areas with like medium noise level, and then so the below noise level, and then the residential areas goes in the back where they have low noise level. So even in city level planning, we have this conservation of like taking care of the noise. And the last principle we have today is environment protection from harm, where the Quran wants again the plundering of the earth. And the Quran says, do not misshape on the earth after it had been set in order. So God gave us this in a certain way. We as a human being, we should take care of it. And also this should follow all the let's say misuse happened in the environment we have today actually is because of our deeds, and we have misused this bounty given to us. So as just to summarize, like what we discussed today, the principles of environment in Islamic perspective match the sustainability principles that call for environment conservation, rational consumption of resources, preserving resources as air and water, call for greener plantation, and keeping environment balanced. Just quickly going through these slides, because again, I should talk about, just mention architecture. We can see even Islamic architecture, whether as in the city level or design level, we can see the principles of sustainability and environment conservation is evident, whether through having compact urban planning, site planning, design philosophy, building envelope, material, natural ventilation. And here we can see several examples of traditional or vernacular architecture that actually is an evidence of sustainability in the design and materials. And I'm just concluding here that issues discussed in this presentation declare that Islam presents a comprehensive approach to dealing with environment, aiming to preserve environment and protect it from pollution. And the Holy Quran and the Sunnah contain a number of conditions and instructions that govern man's behavior with regard to the environment. And here I'm having maybe have no time to go over it, but Islamic approach to environment related to the creation or ownership, humans and environment, preserving protection, and also Prophet Muhammad is an example that we can follow. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for having this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maha, for this incredibly valuable knowledge that you gave us today. It was quite fascinating talk and concepts about sustainability and architecture in Islam. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're off to our third respected panelist here, Dr. Tadash Dioglu, who teaches social sciences and humanities at Yorkville University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and who will speak to us about modern and postmodern Islamic response to ecological issues. And so Dr. Tadash is the founding co-editor of Journal of Posthumanism. He's also an associate member at Brock University's Posthumanism Research Institute and a research associate at the US-based Center for Critical Research on Religion. Dr. Tadash specialized in political science, security, and religion with an emphasis on ecological and technological issues. He has been involved with grassroots ecological movements as well as research organizations, including the Political Ecology Network, the International Society for the Study of Religion, Nature and Culture, and the International Research Network for the Study of Science and Belief in Society. More information about his research and publications can be found on his website, so I encourage the audience to browse that. Welcome, Dr. Tadash, and thank you for being here today, and the screen is off to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are located today. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Nasser. Can you see my, hopefully, screen, but not my notes? Right, so let me put this here. Before starting, I would like to thank you to Yorkville University's Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Department and Tamina Jafer for this opportunity. My colleagues have already mentioned very important aspects of Islamic civilization and its scientific endeavors. So I will try to bring a perspective from a philosophical viewpoint. So this will be related to what we can do today in terms of especially climate change. That's why I will use climate change as an example of disaster, and also climate change as the source of disasters, and how Islamic scientific community as well as civil society responds to these issues today. Very, very briefly, because we only have a couple of minutes. Starting with the title, Modern Postmodern Responses, I use these two concepts not as a periodization, historical periodization, but as a philosophical understanding. In this sense, I don't think there's a linear historical trend in terms of civilizations as well. When we look at one civilization, we can see many influences, historically speaking and philosophically speaking. That's why always there are practices of knitting in terms of intellectual tradition, and that's why I also use postmodern, and as Dr. Nasser mentioned, I am dealing with posthumanism as a philosophical endeavor. So a quick overview of this research is based on my ongoing studies since 2013. And in the next couple of minutes, I will first focus on a comparison of mythical, religious, and scientific ways of understanding disasters, then how Islamic scholars and activists in environmental NGOs deal with these problems practically. There are important examples, and finally an example from Canada, Toronto. It's a nice Islamic NGO, if it is the right word to use. Okay, normally, of course, there are various ways we can understand disaster, and always we are implementing different frameworks. Some of them are called mythology, some of them are called religion, some of them are called science, but honestly, they are not that much distinct. They are always interrelated, and they are influencing each other in the historical spectrum. So I just brought a definition about disaster from Mesopotamian mythology. It says, each time men prevent the god Enlil from sleeping because of their noise, bothered and angry, he tries to reduce their number by sending a natural disaster, famine or plague. To avoid this series of plagues, men do not try to appease Enlil or cut down on the noise they make. Instead, with abundant sacrifices, they appease the god responsible for inflicting misfortune. So this is a definition from Mesopotamian mythology about disaster. Let's see another approach from the Quran. And whatever strikes you of disaster, it is for what your hands have earned, but he pardons much. And a last one, a final one, is from the recent IPCC report. It's just publicized a couple of weeks ago. And disaster, of course, there are different places within the text that we see climate change, disaster, catastrophe. These concepts are frequently used. And this is interesting. It is unequivocal, very certain that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. Widespread and rapid changes in the atmosphere, ocean, cryosphere, and biosphere have occurred. So, of course, I don't want to say throughout the history, science is just rediscovering what mythology or religion have already said. That's not my point. I am following Talal Asad in the sense that there is a dogmatic text in terms of religious studies, and there is normative interpretation. So this is about worldviews. Of course, there are past experiences and future directions that we want to go. So it's always an intersection in this sense, and we are knowing, and we have different ways of knowing in this sense. Okay, that's the distinction I would like to make. And in the academic circles, the study of religion and nature, or specifically Islamic environmentalism and nature-related philosophical approaches, started with Sayyid Hussein Mohammed Nasser's important works. One of them is Man and Nature, written in 1991, and the other one from 1997, Religion and the Order of Nature. These are the two that I have benefited a lot in my own research. Also, on the civil society side, we can see Fazlun Halit. He founded an important environmental civil society organization in the UK, Birmingham. And Fazlun Halit is also a pioneer in his in terms of writing academic texts, because sometimes the academic scholarship does not start as an academic endeavor. It always sparked by historical situations. So climate change or environmental degradation in general was a moment that Fazlun Halit started this initiative. And now when we look at what they are doing, they have various projects, including Green Mosques projects, Scholars for Tree or Islamic Biodiversity. You can see other projects on their website. And they have recently also published a statement for the upcoming UN Conference of Parties, the 26th one. Also, the scholarship now welcomes many important contributions from women scholars. Sarah Tilly from the University of Florida is a prominent scholar in the field, and she is focusing mainly on the question of animal in the Quran, which is very, enlightening in this sense and provocative. And also in the field of environmental advocacy, we can see women activists in the front lines. Eco-Islam is their umbrella in this sense. And also, when we look at the global level collaborations and responses, we see, of course, UN efforts. One of these efforts has been launched in 2000s, of course, Muslim 7-year action plan on climate change, and the other one, more recent one, from 2015, Islamic Declaration on Climate Change. This is supported by United Nations Environmental Program, and in the upcoming conference of the parties in Glasgow, we will see many faith-based organizations. You can be sure about it. They are bringing fresh perspectives as well as, of course, inclusive understandings in terms of climate change and how we can respond to it. And my final slide is about an example from Islamic environmentalism in Canada, specifically in Toronto. Khalifa is an Islamic environmental organization founded in Toronto, and as you can see, there's a wordplay with leaf. Khalif, as you know, means steward, the steward of the earth, and Khalifa focuses on, of course, conservation efforts in Toronto and in other regions in Canada. So, of course, this is not the only example. I just picked this one to your attention. I wanted to bring it to your attention. We know many different religious traditions, of course, philosophical activist traditions. They are trying to bring their own perspectives. they are collaborating each other. Multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary academic research are ongoing. And with this, I must stop. Thank you for your patience. If you want to address any aspect in a deeper way, of course, we can talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chadash. And that was also another fascinating talk. So we thank you all, so much for this. We've got a couple of questions here that we can take very quickly from our audience. The first one is thanking all presenters and asking presenters what inspired you to do your research. So Dr. Jalal, Dr. Maha, Dr. Chadash, if can each of you take 1 minute to explain to us what inspired you to do your research, that would be great.
Go first.
Dr. Jalal, let's go the same order that we presented. Off to you.
Okay. Well, actually, I did it. What I did, it cannot actually be called research. I did some readings years ago from Saudi Aramco World magazine and other magazines, and I just took some notes down, and they were stored in my, documents repertoire. And now when this occasion came, so I went back and I brought it up and I just look at it again. I said I could contribute something. And it's a long paper actually. So it is not a part of serious academic research in that sense. It is just an accumulation or collection of notes that I took because part of my interest is, when I read those magazines, I developed some interest in early Muslim contribution to all these fields. And I'm sorry that today I missed some time. I lost some time. I could not cover as much as I wanted to. But yes, so it is in the making. If I have to turn it into a publishable paper, of course, I have to work on it a lot more. And it still cannot be treated or considered a serious academic research. It is still in a very raw form. So that was it. It is not research, but interest.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jalal. Dr. Maha?
Thank you. I actually had both. I had interest and research. And the interest has been ages ago. But for the actual research, this is start from even the PhD topic that I have picked. I did in England. And the title was Sustainability Potential in a Traditional Architecture in the Arab World. And actually the base of that, most of the research was built on what they mentioned today, which is the Quran and Sunnah. And I took that from environmental standpoint as well as social standpoint. And so this has started there, and I have a full chapter in this thesis that discussed the principles of sustainability and how it's rooted, and it has been supported with verses from Quran, from Prophet Muhammad Sunnah, and so on. So this actual research has been done for a while, but still this what actually the motivation even to conduct this webinar is that we want to confirm that these values are still, or principles are still valid after all these years. And I tried even to relate how sustainability principles in the modern context is actually, as we can find it 15 centuries ago, that has been said. So actually it's for interest as well as research. And I'm happy that I hope that we could deliver a message about this interconnectivity of of Islam principles with the modern life.
Thank you, Dr. Ma. Dr. Chadash, how about you?
Thank you. I think mine is a bit similar to Dr. Maha's journey. I started to focus on the intersection between religion and ecology or nature during my PhD research, but it didn't start directly in that intersection. It was when I was in Leiden, at Leiden University's Islamic scholarship library, that I became aware of this scholarship, because it wasn't that much prominent at that time, almost 10 years ago. It was a political question initially in my mind. I was thinking about going beyond good religion, bad religion distinctions, which are problematic in a philosophical sense, as well as in a political sense, for sure. Then I met this emerging scholarship, and I started to think and engage more with them. And during my postdoctoral studies, I was at the religion department in Gainesville, Florida. Of course, there's a huge scholarship now in terms of religion and society, as well as religion and nature and the environment. They have their own journals, and yeah, that's an ongoing research for me.
Lovely. Thanks, Dr. Josh. And we have
Thank you.
another great question asking, what are some of the principles of Islamic heritage and values that applies to today's modern life, specifically the educational field? So I think that, well, speaking, I'm going to just attempt, just in general here, this one. So speaking in general about today's modern life, I think each of us may have touched a little bit upon some modern thing that relates to Islamic heritage and what was mentioned from either Islamic scholars or the Quran. And specifically when it comes to knowledge or education, and maybe I touched a little bit upon that, as the first word that descendant Qurans actually read. So the Quran is all about asking people or urging people to go ahead and inquire and question things around them and look for signs and look for evidence. And actually there is a verse in the Quran, and I may not know the exact translation, but it does say that the best of the people is or something along the meaning of the best of the people are those who obtain knowledge and pass on knowledge. So that's definitely there. Also the concept of SMEs in Quran as well. So people are encouraged, in case they are unsure about something, to go to those who know best. And that's why I'm gonna perhaps apply this and ask speakers here if they have anything to add in this particular area.
Yeah, I wanted sorry, Dr. Jalal, do you want to answer that?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, please go on. Please go on.
No.
Okay, thank you. I just want to reiterate what Dr. Iman has mentioned. They had a question like how this is actually what we talk about, this principle. This is not just religious to Islam. This is actually all religions and faiths, like in all over the world. These are the same principles, because this is the essence of life and the essence of in humankind. So what we discussed in Islam, definitely it can be discussed in other religions, as I said, in other faiths. And there is a question about, is this valid? The same principle that has been valid 15 or thousands of years ago, it is still here. And people actually lived sustainably for thousands of years. The sustainability was part of their life. They lived sustainably, so they didn't even think about it. Now, because we are abusing and we are excessive use of our resources and thinking we are so powerful level that we can do anything you like, and now things are coming back to us. Nature is giving us to us because we abused the environment and nature, and now we are having all this global warming and all these problems that actually come from this source. So these values, these principles are valid for thousands of years everywhere. Our modern life caused that now we have to discuss that and talk about it. And as is evident in every society, in every community, in every religious and faith.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maha. Here's another question, and maybe that can be our last one. So, yeah, okay. So with the Conference of the Parties 26 coming up, what is one of the most pressing policies regarding sustainability and climate change originating in the Quran can we expect to see leaders try to foster again? Maybe Dr. Maha and Dr. Chadash can help us with this one.
Dr. Maha,
I think you are the best to answer this question. Yeah.
Thank you. And I also saw another question about the intersections amongst the faiths and different disciplines. This might be these two might be addressed together. It's obvious that also Dr. Maha mentioned what we are talking about today. For example, in terms of citizenship, it's different than what our ancestors experienced. So in this sense, when we talk about balance, for example, balance as a concept can be seen in different traditions. And when we look at its practical implications, we cannot easily see it, right? So Mizan is an important concept in the Islamic sense, but I believe other traditions also focusing on we should have a balanced approach to nature and our relationship with other species and the environment. And also, maybe I should mention this long-lasting philosophical discussion about stewardship versus domination. So a believer can understand the principles as a source of domination as well as a source of stewardship. So it is up to us how to interpret it. In this sense, maybe we need to talk about how we can create a dialogue environment and focus on the stewardship aspects of the interpretation, not the domination aspects of it. And it is very much related to, of course, how we see economics. As you know, ecology means the accounting of our home. So how we use our sources, how we implement the principles, these are all related to the economy itself. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So actually, we really have to wrap up. I'm seeing a couple of more very, very good questions. Maybe we can take these offline. It seems that two of them, we know who the person who's asking is, but others we can also share with the whole list of the attendees. That's not a problem. So thank you all to all of our audience and our great panelists today. Quite intriguing fields of knowledge here, and maybe just planting seeds for more knowledge and throwing a lot of food for thought for our great audience and even ourselves as well. Thank you all for your time, and that was quite informative. Thank you all for everything.